Welcome back, troops, to Let's Tab 59. What a cracking day. Lovely afternoon here, very calm. So this, before I get into the video, this video is my 300th video that I've posted on YouTube in 18 months. 18 months ago when I started, I never thought I'd get 300 videos up, and I never thought I'd get the amount of subscribers I've got, 14,500. Which is amazing. So thank you all for your support over the last 18 months getting me here. So today's video, I want to chat about the big BAOR/NATO exercises that we conducted back in the Cold War days. It's a bit of a reminiscence. Pull up a sandbag, swing a lantern. So at the start of the Cold War, as you know, the four Allied powers after the end of World War II divided Germany up into four sectors. USSR taking the east of Germany, and France, United States and UK getting three chunks each of West Germany. And then the Cold War started, and the Soviet Union dropped the Iron Curtain, basically really cutting Germany in half, and the eastern half being this USSR's territory, if you like. And that formed West Germany in the west and East Germany, DDR, in the east. And tensions then started to grow between east and west, and relationships went down the tubes. Both sides now got nuclear weapons, and there's a lot of mistrust going on. We all know that, the Cold War. And so how did NATO respond to that? Well, NATO obviously had a fear that the USSR may expand and try to invade West Germany and take over the whole of Germany under their Soviet control. And so NATO drops loads and loads, posts loads and loads of troops into Western Europe, obviously mainly into West Germany. And the British became the British Army of the Rhine, the army we had out there then. So it's one thing to pile all these NATO troops into West Europe and West Germany, but of course they've got to be able to work together as a cohesive fighting force, defensive fighting force, in the event that the Soviet Union did invade. And so that really naturally brought to bear that we needed to train together. And so these big exercises started to happen, and they ran through the 50s, 60s, gradually getting bigger and bigger and more complex, and into the 70s. And then at the height of the Cold War, I believe the height of the Cold War was the 80s. I think that's when we got closest to it really going hot, from a Cold War to a hot war. So in the 1980s, these big exercises started to appear, big NATO exercises. The first one I remember was, I think in 1980, with Exercise Spear Point, and then Exercise Crusader around the same time. I remember Crusader distinctly. That was a 6-week exercise, and it was big. We had other ones. There was, of course, I think it was called Reforger, Exercise Reforger, and I think the word Reforger was Reinforce Germany. And a mainly US one, I think, to try and get extra United States troops, personnel over from the States and into Europe, into West Germany. Because although we held a lot of troops in Germany, West Germany, if the Cold War had gone hot and the Third Shock Army, whatever they were, they come bowling over the border into Germany, highly mechanised as the Soviet Union was, and a lot of their vehicles, or armoured vehicles especially, were amphibious, because they anticipated that we'd blow a lot of the bridges across River Rhine, etc. And so they'd need to be amphibious. So we anticipated that the Russians would move, the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact countries, would move east to west very, very fast. And we would need time to reinforce West Germany. So I think that's what Reforge was about, testing the ability to get troops into Western Europe, into West Germany, to counter a Soviet invasion. Eternal Triangle was another one. And it all sort of culminated, built up, there were several, but I think the biggest one we ever had must have been Exercise Lionheart in '84. for about 6 weeks. I think it ran from early September into October, something like that. Must have been about a 6-week exercise. The British deployed 131,500 troops, personnel on that exercise. We already had about 55,000 personnel in West Germany at the time, but the other 50-odd thousand came from the UK. And we called up, obviously we had the regular army back in UK, divisions there that came out, but the TA, as it was then, the Territorial Army, it's now the Army Reserve, but the Territorial Army, they deployed lots of troops as well to make up this 50,000. Obviously, in TA soldiers, they would have only deployed for up to 2 weeks of that sort of 4 to 6 week exercise that Exercise Lionheart was. So TA came out, and also our reserves. Now, when I say reserves, I'm not talking about the current Army Reserves, which were the TA. We had that. We also have the regular reserve. Now, that's service personnel that have left the armed forces before they've completed 12 years service. So if they've done 3, 6, 9 years, or anywhere around that, as long as it's less than 12, when they leave, they have a reserve commitment up until 12-year point. So if they've done 6 years in the armed forces and left, they've then got to do 6 years on the regular reserve list. And they retain a small amount of kit, clothing, and yearly it gets checked, I believe. And some of those guys and girls were called up. I think they were given the option, some were asked to come out, and some just got called up and went to test the system mainly, I think. So that's what that extra 50,000 from the UK was made up of. So we had this 131,500. Obviously that's just the British Army and British forces that went out there. The opposing force, playing the Third Shock Army, those ghastly Orange Army Fantasia forces, that was made up of about 10,000 troops, and that was United States soldiers along with West German soldiers and some Dutch. And I think there's some Commonwealth units as well involved in that. But they made up the enemy force, if you like, posing as the Soviet Union, Warsaw Pact. I believe Lionheart, that was the first use of, I think I'm right in saying the first use of the M1 Abrams, the new main battle tank that the Americans had at the time. I think Challenger 1 was deployed for the first time on that exercise. And I think also the early stages of the Warrior infantry fighting vehicle, the British had the Warrior, which we've still got. That was the first time they used some of those as well. So a lot of new equipment was tried out. I believe Klansman radio system, that was first used. And it'd been used before that, but it's the first big exercise that Klansman had been used on as well. So there was a lot of new equipment and vehicles being used. So, also on that exercise, Lionheart, there was 3 deaths, British deaths. I'm not sure about other forces in NATO, but certainly there was 3 British personnel killed and 7 seriously hospitalised, injuries as well. I mean, you're always going to get that on exercises, and even peacetime training exercises, there's always a threat. It's a dangerous old business. And when you're moving lots of troops around in the dark, in vehicles, people are tired, accidents can happen. I don't know the circumstances of those 3 deaths, how those 3 service personnel died and how that 7 got injured, seriously injured. But anyway, that was Exercise Lionheart. Now, after that, I don't think we ever deployed again that size force. An interesting point on this one, and I remember this from doing previous exercises to Lionheart, that whenever we started these exercises, they always seemed to be around September time. Now, somebody told me that they would expect, if the Soviet Union were to invade at the time, they believed they would do it after they had their main harvest for that year, so that at least they'd got plenty of food crops in for that year, but so they wouldn't do it until after the harvest. And I suppose because of British troops and NATO forces in West Germany ploughing around the countryside, at least the West German farmers would have got their crops in by then, mainly got their crops in, certainly their cereal crops, because obviously our armoured vehicles and etc. were ploughing across their fields, closely followed by the old bloke with the checkbook, manoeuvre Chardon, paying the farmers out for the damage to their fields. So, and I remember on those exercises that when they kicked off around that time, September-ish, we always seemed to deploy to what would be our war fighting positions. I don't think we went to our actual ones, we went to fake ones. We didn't use our actual ones, I don't think. What we would do once we got there is once the exercise started, we'd retreat. Because as I say, we expected the massive size of the Soviet Union army, the USSR, the Warsaw Pact, massive force, to just pile across West Germany and into the west. And so we would have to sort of fight a retreating battle, if you like, to try to slow down that vanguard of Soviet Union, delay them as much as possible, to give us time to get extra troops from UK, like Reforger, get troops from the UK and from the United States out to West Germany so that we could try and match the Soviet Union in manpower, because that's what we lacked. We were outnumbered. So for the first couple of days, we sort of was always retreating back, and I think then the idea was that we'd get to some natural obstacle, like say the Rhine, the River Rhine, get on the western bank of the Rhine, blow the bridges and set up a defensive position there to try and hold the Soviet Union back until we'd got it reinforced. And quite a funny thing happened, and I'm trying to remember, and I was thinking about this earlier today, I was trying to remember which exercise it was on, and I can't quite remember. Something tells me it could have been Crusader, but I'm not sure. It might have even been Lionheart, I can't remember. But basically what happened to me was, we were on this big NATO exercise, and I was driving a young officer around on the exercise with our unit, and we were in a location and we had to retreat back from it. We had to fall back from that position, and it was about 15-20 kilometres that we had to fall back from. So me and this officer and a couple of others in Land Rovers drove off to do a reconnaissance back of our new position that we're going to go to, our fallback position. We're to go there in the Land Rovers, do a reconnaissance of the area, make sure we've got a track plan, etc., and that the area was marked out for where we're going to put the various units. So we went off and done that, checked the area out, marked it all up, went back, briefed up the troops, got everyone together in packets, and then we done the move back from this position to the new one. Gets there at night, imagine it's a night move, everyone's doing it in silence. Remember the convoy drills, no lights, no, complete darkness, moving out of this forest block and down 15-20 k's to our new position and moved into it. We got in there and set up, and it come daylight and we'd left the cookhouse behind. Somehow, I don't know how that happened, but we forgot to bring the cookhouse with us. So this captain says to me, go back in the Land Rover quickly. Now I'm going behind enemy lines near enough. Drive back there, grab the cookhouse and get them down here. So off I goes to my Land Rover, drives back to the old position, pulls in there. Lo and behold, there's the cookhouse. It's a 4-ton lorry with like a penthouse tent on the side or the back. And I think there was a sergeant chef there and a couple of his bods, and maybe, I think about 4 or 5 of them, knocking up whatever they were doing. There was pots steaming away, etc. So I briefed him up and said, what are you doing? We've all gone, you know, you're behind enemy lines, mate. And I'm briefing him up. He's having a bit of a moan. He's got all his food to sort out and put into containers and move the whole cookhouse. No easy feat. So he starts to get that in motion. Up rocks an umpire. And I believe it's Americans in a Jeep. 2 umpires, white mine tape around the head. They rock up and just observing us. Few minutes after the umpires turned up rocks 2 Leopard tanks belonging to the Dutch army. And they were the enemy. They had big orange squares or crosses or whatever on the turret of the tank, etc. They rocks up, you're captured, son. So the umpires, that's it, you're here. We're going to hold you here for 12 hours. So the 2 tanks, the 2 Dutch tanks, plus the umpires, plus me and the cookhouse crew, that's us for 12 hours. Not allowed to use our radios, we couldn't let the unit know what happened to me. and we're captured and held for 12 hours. And we got about, I don't know, 60, 70 men's worth of stew on the go, or curry, whatever it was. And it smelled quite good, and these Dutch tank crews come out. They'd got a few slabs of beer, so that was it. The Dutch crew sat down with us, with the umpires as well, and we all stuffed our faces with this stew or curry, whatever it was, drinking a load of Dutch beer. What a cracking time that was. 12 hours out of it, non-tack, having a laugh. That was quite a good experience. I can't remember what exercise it was on. And another funny one, I'll tell you about this one. This was quite funny. Well, I thought it was. So we were doing this retreat. As I say, we'd got across these rivers, the bridges had supposedly been blown, and then we were going to move back up to the counter-attack. So the whole of the BOR, whole division was moving back now towards the east again. And of course we get to these rivers where we'd blown these bridges, not for real, simulated blown these bridges. And we had to cross the rivers, Rhine or the Weser, whatever it was. And so the Royal Engineers, along with foreign engineer troops, had laid bridges across. And we had to do this night crossing on this bridge, quite a big one. So I'm in the packet, I'm still with this Land Rover, this young officer. We're parked up in silence with our packet behind us, looking down. I could see the bridge. And down the right-hand side of the bridge was all little green torches. You know, army rectangle, right-angle torches, posted all the way down the side of the bridge. And on the left-hand side, there was red ones. And I thought, I'll have one of them. I could come in, they're £2 a penny now, but back then, little rectangle torch with a filter on it, quite a handy bit of kit. I thought, I'll have one of them. So as we get called forward, we start to cross the bridge. Left-hand drive Land Rover, so I got the window open. As we're driving across slowly, I put my hand out to grab one of these torches, but it's actually a bloke holding it. It was a Royal Engineer bloke, or I don't know if he's British, and I can't remember. He was holding the torch like that, because I put my hand out the window, grabbed the torch, he struggled. We're having a bit of a struggle over this torch. I just towed it off, we went. Didn't get the torch, I think it dropped. But we did have some laughs in those exercises. They're supposed to have been dry, but as you know, you veterans that were out there was always beer stashed somewhere. All the side bins of the vehicles, even the NBC filters on the 432s, took the cover off them, stuck some yellow handbags in it. There was Asbac bottles stashed everywhere. So behind tent flaps and behind closed doors in vehicles, there was drinking that went on, obviously. And every now and again, if someone was going off on a recce or some sort of move or O group or whatever, they'd go past the Schnell Imbiss, pull in and grab bratties and pommes frites, etc., and maybe another slab of beer. And that's the sort of thing that went on out there. That was all part of British Army of the Rhine back in those days. So I just wanted to touch on those exercises. I'm sure many of you that were out there have got your own stories from back then. Exercise Crusader, Spear Point, Reforger, Eternal Triangle, Crusader, Lionheart, like I said, all those big exercises. Never to be seen again. I don't think we'll ever see those sort of, unless it's a war, maybe. We just don't have those numbers now, do we? You know, we couldn't field that many soldiers. So, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying consider it. Until next time, troops, stay safe. Remember, West Tab.